We're excited to announce that our very own podcasting platform, Zencastr, has become a new sponsor to the show. Check out the podcast's discount link in our show notes and stay tuned for why we love using Zen for the podcast.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello out there in Archaeology Podcast land. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm the president and founder of the California Rock Art Foundation. And what we do is we identify, evaluate, manage, and conserve rock art both in Alta California and in Baja California. We conduct field trips, we have trainings, exercise, we do research, and in every way possible, we try to preserve, protect, and coordinate treasures of Alta and Baja California rock art, of which there are many and diverse. We also work closely with Native Americans and partner with them to recognize and protect sacred sites. So for more info about the fabulous California Rock Art Foundation, you can go to carockart.org. Also, I'm open to give me a call, 805-312-2261. We would welcome sponsorship or underwriting, helping us to defray the costs of our podcasts, and also membership in California Rock Art Foundation. And of course, donations, since we are a 501c3 nonprofit scientific and educational corporation. God bless everyone out there in podcast land.
You're listening to the Rock Art Podcast. Join us every week for fascinating tales of rock art, adventure, and archaeology. Find our contact info in the show notes and send us your suggestions.
Hello and welcome to the Rock Art Podcast. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm the host of the Rock Art Podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network. This is episode 24, and today we're going to hear from Danielle Flowers, who's a cultural resources manager and also Native American consultant. And she's going to talk to us about what it's like to relate to Native people and deal with their heritage values. Hello out there in Archaeological Podcast land. This is your host, Dr. Alan Garfinkel, and this is episode number 24. Can you imagine, of the Rock Art Podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network? And we are honored and blessed to have a close friend for many, many years, Danielle Flowers, with us as our guest scholar. And we'll be talking today about an unusual subject in some ways, but related to rock art in the broad realm. We're going to be talking about Native American consultation and coordination, what it's like to do cultural resources management, and what are the heritage values and basic philosophical premises, sort of the cosmology, the worldview of Native people, and how that relates to the study of archaeology, anthropology, and rock art. Danielle Flowers, are you with us?
I am here, and great to be with you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. We've been talking about this and planning on doing this for some time, haven't we?
We have, and now we're here. Today's the day.
Can you imagine what a concept right out here in the virtual reality? Now, where are you speaking to me from?
From foggy Los Osos, California.
Los Osos. Now, where about is Los Osos?
It's a little bedroom community, right next to Morro Bay, on the Central Coast.
So it's very beautiful. It's coastal, and it has an interesting background, I'm sure. But that's kind of been your stomping ground, that area around, is it San Luis Obispo County and some of the other coastal climes? Yes?
Yes. Been here since 2012. I moved here. Actually, I have you to thank for moving here. Might talk about that a little bit later, but
yes,
it's been 8 years now.
Well, wonderful. So the $1 million question that I usually open up our interviews with is, how did you ever get involved in the field of archaeology, anthropology, Native American consultation and coordination, and all things relating to this big heritage values niche?
Well, I luckily found out what I wanted to do when I grew up. When I was in high school, well, a young lady, a college student that was volunteering at my school, gave me a book to read called Dead Men Do Tell Tales. It's by Dr. Maples from the University of Gainesville in Florida. And he had worked on very famous cases, the Elephant Man, I think the Tsar of Russia, the Pete Bog Man. And I thought, this is the coolest thing. This is what I want to do. So when I got to college at Fresno State, I went to the anthropology department, talked with Dr. Roger Lajeunesse, told him about the book I had read, and he said, well, you need to be an anthropologist if you'd like to do that. So I said, okay, great. I had my life planned out, joined the anthropology department and the criminology department. I thought that'd be a good idea as well. I was on track to become a forensic anthropologist. Okay. Then Fresno State opened a crime lab toward the end of my educational career. And I thought, oh, great, I'll be one of the first classes. That'd be great. But we went to the department, and they said, well, you're going to need a chemistry degree. Now, by that time, I had already been in school for probably 6 or 7 years, and I thought, I'm not going to go back and do another major. So I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm not going to be an anthropologist. What am I going to do now? Also going on in my life at that time, I was traveling back and forth to London. I was in love. And so I didn't really care about my career at that moment. Okay, I'm not going to be an archaeologist.
Yes. Who am I going to marry instead of following a career in the business world? Next.
Right. So then that didn't work out. So I came back in America, got a job at a temp agency after I'd been working at Bank of America and hating my life. And this was during the right before the financial crash in 2008. And so I was one of the contributors, one of the tellers that was being forced to pressure people by getting into loans they didn't want. But so anyway, I hated the job, got into a temp agency, and they placed me at Table Mountain Rancheria in the IT department.
You're kidding me. A temporary agency placed you at Table Mountain.
But not as an archaeologist. I was in the IT department, and I ran into Dr. Lajeunesse and Dr. John Pryor at a luncheon, and they said, Danielle, what are you doing in the IT department? You need to be in the cultural resources department. But I can work there. And so a month later, I was in that department with the recommendation from Dr. Lajeunesse and Dr. Pryor, and the rest is history. That started my career in there.
What a serendipitous circumstance. I have never asked you this question before, and all this information is rather new to me as well. The first time I've heard it is the first that I think we're sharing.
Lucky me, right?
Exactly. So you find yourself in the Cultural Resources Department for the Table Mountain Rancheria, which is a group of Yokuts Indians in the Central Valley of California.
That's right.
What did they have you do, and what was your role there?
I was so fortunate for that to happen to me, for me to get the job there. That really set me on the path, especially working with Native peoples. I couldn't have asked for a better introduction into the field. Learning from the Native perspective was really a great foundation. In the Cultural Resources Department, they did various things. At the time I was there, they were planning to build, and then I actually helped with the building of reconstructing Fort Miller. It was an old Civil War fort that was taken out when Millerton Lake was put in. An old woman bought all the materials and took very detailed notes and photographs, and then it sat in a barn for years and years and years. Table Mountain purchased all the material and reconstructed the officers' quarters from photographs and notes, and I helped in that.
Now, why would the Native people of Table Mountain want to reconstruct some sort of a military facility?
I think that the fort was built with the Native labor.
Sure.
And it did impact the tribe, having the soldiers there.
Sure.
And many times when anybody goes to visit these military museums, the Native perspective is often left out or very small.
Okay.
And now this gave a chance for Table Mountain to tell that period's history for them in their own way.
Oh, my word. So that was accomplished? You actually reconstructed this facility?
I had help. I had a small part.
Yeah, a small part. But you did contribute to the design, the execution, and the development of, I presume it's sort of an interpretive facility, a reconstructed fort?
Yes, it is.
And I didn't know that even existed there. Is that available to be seen, or is it something that just Native people are aware of?
No, it was designed. I'm not sure what the state is at this time, especially with COVID, but it was designed to be open to the public, school tours. I'm not sure on an individual basis, but
sure.
I think it contacted the tribal administration hall.
Sure.
Or I could also, since I know you, I can probably put in a word and ask. But for everyone else that would like to visit, I would highly encourage it. They did a phenomenal job, and the exhibits are amazing.
When was that facility originally used and active?
I think it was a Union Army facility to quell any Confederate uprisings or any activity that might be occurring in the area.
So it had to be in the 1860s, of course, right there. Yeah.
Right there, yep. Mm-hmm.
So after that important emphasis and activity, what were you doing with Table Mountain?
In addition to that, many other things. We would host educational workshops for the children, as well as cultural resources management. We were inventorying all of the sites on the property, involved in many fee to trust, putting some of the tribal members' trust allotment land or fee land that they would have on the property, within the area. Yeah. And getting that into trust land to become tribal land.
What is the for those of me who are perhaps as naive as I am? What's the difference, and what are those terminologies? What do those mean?
Well, fee land is some for tax purposes. Where you live, you pay taxes, or where the Smart and Final is located. Okay. But trust land is the government is holding the property in trust for an individual.
I see. And it probably has a different tax structure, a different ownership, a lot of other...
Not taxed, since it's technically government land.
I see. Okay.
See, that would be the fee to trust, or fee land.
I see. Okay. And so that was part of it. And you would do this relating to the historic sites, the archaeological sites, the other sites along those lines, or other things as well? In
the fee to trust applications?
Yeah.
They would require archaeology surveys, reports, inventory of what is on the property, just like many other permitting requirements. Right. Or any land use type of permitting requirements will require an archaeological survey and site review. In addition, they would have me monitor on occasion if there were any projects, construction, ground disturbance projects that would be of importance to the tribe or within the area. Consultation with, now I was on the other side at this point, we would receive many, many letters of for consultation from different consulting groups asking for our input, and we'd reply, submitting.
So this would be the kind of letters that I might send, because this standard thing is that, being a cultural resources manager, you're approached by some sort of a client who wants to do some sort of development. It could be a commercial or residential development, what have you. And either the California Environmental Quality Act, or if it's a federal initiative, National Environmental Policy Act, we'd have to do some sort of a survey, and we have to do Native American consultation and coordination. And we get this list from the Native American Heritage Commission, and there is Table Mountain. So we send a letter with a map telling them we want to consult with you or give me some input. You'd get that letter.
I'd get that letter, and I'd either say, yes, please, I'd like to have a meeting with you, have a discussion with you. We do know of some important resources in the area. And when I was working for the tribe, they used different language and for their different sites and artifacts. So we'd be using those, educating the consultants
about the presence of sensitive sites, I would presume, they could be sacred areas, they could be ceremonial areas, they could be prehistoric sites, historic sites, anything under the sun. But there's all these heritage sites that they were aware of, that someone who's just being retained would have no knowledge of, certainly.
Right.
I presume a lot of these sites were never previously recorded or available through the info center. Maybe some were and some weren't. How did that work?
We surveyed much of the tribal land and found some previously unknown sites. Prior to that, we were working with tribal members, elders within the community that would walk with us in many cases to show us what they knew. Also, members from the community, maybe not necessarily from Table Mountain, but building relationships with nearby tribes and talking with their elders and their cultural staff and any other people that had an interest was crucial in answering what sometimes we didn't know exactly what we were seeing. There were a few instances where these types of sites hadn't been recorded.
So you would work with the native people who would sometimes walk along with you, and you would then learn more about their heritage vis-a-vis the resources, the sites, the history. Am I correct? Am I going the right direction?
That is correct. I mentioned all the various local native groups that we would constantly be in contact with to get information and just to maintain and further build our relationships. But another group that was crucial into our success of the department was building relationships with local ranchers that had families that maybe had property in the area for 3-4 generations, had many times some of the most beautiful basket and artifact collections that you ever see.
Oh, I'd love to get into that as well, please. Yeah,
they have, and also knew many of the people in the area, the native people in the area. They had relationships and a lot of knowledge.
That's
and then
fantastic.
Taking knowledge from the non-native ranchers and was able to give us a very, combined with the native people, was able to give us quite a very good wealth of information.
Yeah, just an historic picture of the relationships and probably the people that they knew and what they had learned.
And those relationships there wasn't always, conflict between those relationships.
Right, sometimes they were beneficial and amicable and not adversarial.
Right.
Okay, well, I think that's enough on this segment, but in the next segment, I think we can delve a bit deeper on some of these specific methods and maybe some of the things that we learned from native people and some of the local ranchers. See you on the flip-flop.
Chris Webster here for the Archaeology Podcast Network. We strive for high-quality interviews and content so you can find information on any topic in archaeology from around the world. One way we do that is by recording interviews with our hosts and guests located in many parts of the world all at once. We do that through the use of Zencastr. That's Zencastr. Zencastr allows us to record high-quality audio with no stress on the guest. Just send them a link to click on, and that's it. Zencastr does the rest. They even do automatic transcriptions. Check out the link in the show notes for 30% off your first 3 months, or go to zencastr.com and use the code ROCKART. Looking to expand your knowledge of X-rays and imaging in the archaeology field? Then check out An Introduction to Paleoradiography, a short online course offering professional training for archaeologists and affiliated disciplines. Created by archaeologist, radiographer, and lecturer James Elliott, the content of this course is based upon his research and teaching experience in higher education. It is approved by the Chartered Institute for Archaeologists as 4 hours of training. That's in the UK, for those of you that don't know. So don't miss out on this exciting opportunity for professional and personal development. For more information on pricing and course structure, visit paleoimaging.com. That's PALEO imaging.com, and look for the link in the show notes to this episode.
Chicken tacos should only be trusted to chicken professionals.
That's where we come in. Introducing Zaxby's new chicken finger tacos. One comes with pico de gallo and creamy chipotle ranch, and the other comes with bacon, lettuce, tomato, and avocado ranch. Chicken experts since 1990. Chicken taco experts since now. Order yours today in the Zax Rewards app. Woo, saucy! Zaxby's.
Welcome back to your Rock Art Podcast, episode 24. This is Dr. Alan Garfinkel. I'm president and founder of the California Rock Art Foundation, and I'm playing host to an amazing odyssey from Danielle Flowers, who's talking about her life as a cultural resources manager, working for the tribe, Yokut's tribe, Table Mountain in the Central Valley, and talking about the role of the cultural resources manager with the tribe and how that works and what the strategies are and what the feelings are and the methods and kind of what she's done and how that relates to Native American heritage. Danielle, we started along on the first segment, sort of moving along, and then you started to sort of paint a picture of some of the methods that you used in terms of gleaning information, both from Native people and from the local ranchers. I was interested in hearing more about the ranchers and some of the things you might have learned vis-a-vis the interviews and the interaction that you had.
Well, with the ranchers, unfortunately, the views on collecting artifacts and pot hunting have, I hope they're a bit better now.
But they've changed over the years, and I know that the ranchers early on would find these objects, and I guess they were curious, and they would collect them, and they would probably have a fairly astounding private collection of artifacts that they would be happy to share with you. And then you also mentioned that they may have purchased baskets early on. Right. And this is what I've been told, but in the early 1900s, especially during the Depression and beyond, or before and beyond, some of the great basket collections were obtained through trade. Mm-hmm. There's, I think, on Blackstone and Clinton, there's a coin shop, maybe farther south than that. It's farther south in Clinton area. There's a place that would trade baskets there. And I'm sure there were others as well. And it sounds like sometimes, I happen to be the editor of a brand new book on the masterpiece California Indian baskets. And some of the Yokut's weavers are astounding. Some of the gambling trays, the gaming trays are phenomenal. And the period of time when they were making these incredible baskets was from about 1880, 1890, right through maybe the 1930s, even, just when the Depression hit, things sort of changed. But they called that the fluorescence period, and tourists and people all over California were interested in, there was this craze going on. They had Native American rooms in their houses, and they would purchase baskets, and Native people, I understand, would sell those baskets, especially the weavers, and they would be able to earn sometimes, as much as to do any other sort of activity. The commanding prices of the baskets at that time were rather impressive, and women would, fashion them to earn income. Right. Yeah. Many of the more decorative baskets that you'll find, I've been told that those were meant for sale versus for, normal domestic use. Right. And I know that some of those gaming trays, are adorned with images. They call them sometimes friendship baskets, where they have a ring of men and women holding hands all around the outsides. They're Yokuts. And they also had these, they called them rattlesnake baskets. And I know that ethnographically, they're neck jars with those series of diamonds or triangles around them. And they're exquisite. They're absolutely exquisite. Sometimes with the quail. The quail plumes, yes, adorning the rim of the basket. Yeah, they're just very impressive. So, but you've told us that in your activities, you did learn a bit more about the native lifeways, both from working with the native people and then, I guess, cross-correlating that with talking to the ranchers. Am I correct? That's correct. It was really useful, beneficial, especially when it came to planning the Table Mountain Museum, getting both perspectives. And I think it's also helpful in general to get a full, complete story from both sides, or, all sides, I should say. There are more than two sides. So what was it like creating a Table Mountain Museum? And how did you go about that? I helped with that. Table Mountain hired an amazing museum director, Christina Gonzalez Moreno.
with the vision and input from the tribal elders and the tribal council.
Yeah.
They would propose, Christina and Bob Pinnell, the director of the Cultural Resources Department, would propose with the input of the local community, tribal council and all, and a range of exhibits. At the time I was there, they partnered with Fresno State and had a number of museum exhibits there. I think they have a whole wing at the Fresno State Library that is sponsored by Table Mountain.
And dedicated from the Table Mountain.
I think so.
Yeah.
For a number of years, I don't know if it still exists, but they projected a very famous basket weaver, Lois Connor, onto the side of the Fresno State Library. And in real time, showed her weaving from the very beginning, the start of the basket. And the idea was people to walk, I wonder what this woman's doing. And then, several months later, you'd see that this basket had grown and grown and grown. It was very, very great. A very cool and new idea I hadn't thought about. I had never seen it and still haven't seen anywhere else.
What a method for public outreach, basically taking high technology and mirroring it with ancient technology and putting it in a gorgeous image-focused way. Brilliant. Just amazing.
Lois Connor would get up like her job every day and put on the same dress. I think it was a red dress, and get in front of there was like an X or something marking where she should be, the camera going, and then started working every day. So it looked like she'd just continuously been working on this basket for months without sleep or shower.
Well, that's wonderful. Very, very creative. So in crafting a museum and crafting sort of the reconstruction of the historic fort and working with Native Americans and also working with, conventional cultural resource managements that don't work with the tribe, and we're not part of the tribal cultural resources division. What was that like, being an insider, but also being living in a number of different worlds simultaneously?
At the time, that it didn't seem odd because it was my first experience. But, looking back on it now, that was an extremely fortunate position to be in.
What did you learn? What was the takeaway from your experience, those years that you worked with the Yokuts Table Mountain within their Cultural Resources Department and intimately connected with all these Native people? What is the thing that you would want to share with both the general public and those people that patch in who are professional archaeologists or people who just work in the field? How can we best communicate what it's like to be a Native American and what are the things they value the most?
Well, anytime that you get the opportunity to work with a tribe or a Native person representing a tribe in this capacity, first, do what your parents told you, respect and listen. Respect is first, listening second. You have to come into this knowing that there hasn't always been a great relationship between archaeologists and Native people. Actually, a terrible one in some cases. We had a mix of different experiences in the Yokuts area. Some of the tribes hadn't had very good experiences. So as an outsider, as a non-Native person, you want to build those relationships, and you build that by being respectful and listening to what they have to say. You have to be a trusted partner, be honest and forthcoming from the beginning. They should know that their concerns and views are important in general and also to you. I think that's very important.
So you're building a personal relationship.
Personal relationship first. I don't think that without those relationships first, I'm not sure that I would get very far. I'm not sure that my phone calls would get returned in the same way now if those relationships weren't there.
So dealing with Native people is a bit different from dealing with business people or non-Native people. Am I correct?
Yes. And
how would that if you could contrast the two, give me a little bit of a hint as to what I should do and what I should not do. And for instance, I tend to be on transmit and speak at great length on anything just to hear myself speak. And that probably doesn't go well with many Native people, does it?
No, if I have witnessed archaeologists that maybe didn't have any or very little experience working with Native peoples tell them that what they thought was wrong, or that sort of in a very disrespectful way dismiss what Native people have to say. Yeah. Let me give you an anecdotal experience that I remember. I don't know why this just came up in my mind. Remember when we worked together out there at the North Sky River in the Kelso Valley? Yes. Okay. So before that whole project began, they had to do a bit of survey, which was done. And that survey in part went across Judy Weldon's land. Mm-hmm. Well, the archaeologists just went ahead and surveyed, right? They didn't talk to Judy Weldon. They didn't stop by and say anything. She was out there. They just went ahead and just did it. Mm-hmm. How would that be perceived by a Native person? Very, very, very disrespectful. Exactly. Especially in some of these very often very rural areas. Mm-hmm. You should just respect first. Ask permission always before doing anything. Ask permission before touching things. Pointing, maybe some might view as disrespectful. I have to remember to not do that. Probably in general. Native people aren't the only people that might find that rude. Say you see something on the ground that might be an artifact. Some people don't think that they should be touched at all, examined from afar. Some people will pick it up with you, will pick it up before you. So ask the views of the people that you're working with, the person that you're working with, and make sure that you're doing things and in the way that is respectful and the way preferable to them. So it's an issue of communication, sensitivity, transparency, and a bit of finesse. Right. And as you're well aware, archaeologists, by their very nature, I don't think have much of any of those attributes. Have you perceived that, Danielle? On occasion. Exactly. Yeah. Be careful what you say. Even sometimes you may not know that you are being offensive. In one case, a guy actually got fired from a job that we were on. One of the Native monitors observed him doing what he thought was a very racist gesture, and thought he was saying something very offensive. I knew the guy personally, and I don't think that that would ever come into his mind. I didn't hear it happen myself, but I doubt that happened. But because he wound up losing his job over the event. So I just would caution people to be, my fellow archaeologists, just be careful and respectful. And I'm not sure how that one would have been avoided, but you don't know who's watching you and how they'll perceive what you're saying. So always conduct yourself. Okay. Well, I think we'll call this second segment we'll call it for time, and then in the next segment, I think we'll try to get into some of the nuances of some of this in terms of some of the specific examples, and maybe we'll even touch upon rock art. How's that? Okay. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Danielle. See you on the flip flop.
You may have heard my pitch for membership. It's a great idea and really helps out. However, you can also support us by picking up a fun t-shirt, sticker, or something from a large selection of items from our TeePublic store. Head over to arcpodnet.com/shop for a link. That's arcpodnet.com/shop to pick up some fun swag and support the show.
Welcome back to the Rock Art Podcast on the Archaeology Podcast Network. This is episode 24. We're in the last segment of our hour-long show, and we have as our guest Danielle Flowers, Cultural Resource Manager and Native American Liaison Extraordinaire. Hi, Danielle. You there?
I'm here.
Great. Well, we had a wonderful segment, the last segment, talking about some of the protocol and the ways in which archaeologists can better relate or be more sensitive and finesseful and artful and understand how to communicate with Native people and what to think about vis-a-vis their interactions. Danielle, can you give me the good, what is it, the good, the bad, and the ugly remaining, examples of sort of the best practices for that? What do Native Americans, from your perspective, in the world of the Yokuts and other people that you've dealt with, think about rock art, if we're talking about, or think about, art in general, and in general, the way in which we relate to traditional cultural properties, sacred sites, etc. What are their feelings and concerns? How's that?
Probably feelings are great pride and great significance, feeling the need to, they place a great value in the rock art and probably obviously would like to see them protected. In general, probably would not like many people visiting just to protect against vandalism and
sure.
things like that. There's a wonderful famous rock art site near my neck of the woods, the Painted Cave in Santa Barbara.
Sure.
I think that one, I haven't been myself, but I've been told that it has bars, and that's a nice way that the public can view it without having access to destroy it.
Yes, and there is, considerable vandalism. I know they protected it probably in the 1930s or 1940s.
Oh, was it that?
Yeah, but it has, earlier than that, it did receive quite a lot of vandalism, but it has been protected ever since that, and it probably wouldn't be in the nice state of preservation if it wasn't for that kind of protection.
Right.
So I guess it's unfortunate that people don't understand the significance, the religious value, the sacredness of those places. Maybe you can talk a bit about that.
In my experience, working with Native peoples around rock art, there seems to be, this is just my interpretation, that there seems to be a greater importance placed on the place, the geographical location.
Yes.
And I would, if I had to guess, I would think that would be due to maybe not, I haven't heard a lot of interpretation of the images and
right
significance of the rock art.
But the significance of place.
That's not known, but the significance of place is known.
So to communicate to the general public and the professional archaeologists and those that work in the field, what is it about the place? What is it about the geography, the landform, the heritage values? What is it that's so compelling to Native people? If you could give us maybe some insights or wisdom from your interaction, if I'm even asking the right question.
The way that archaeologists, and I think maybe the general public, may look at different parts of an archaeological site, say, or just a site as singular thing. The artifacts here, the arrowheads we have some flakes, we have some rock art as all individual sort of items. But really, it's the whole landscape that is of significance. I don't think that a Native person views, a 10 meter by 10 meter site as just that site. The rock art is maybe more than the standard 30 meters away to have it included within the site. That's not of significance when looking through the Native perspective. A lot of the sacred places are tied to maybe origin stories or different histories told within the tribe. So it is all matters, and maybe the anthropomorphic figures may not be identifiable to a person. It doesn't change the fact of the whole story that this place tells.
Right. And so one of the things that I've taught upon and learned more from an academic standpoint, but even with my time with Native people, is that the landscape is alive. It's a sentient being. It's alive. And as we walk along a canyon, as we see a stream or a mountain or a hill or whatever is there, these are the places that their ancestors have traveled. This is the place where we live. This is part of us. It's part of our heritage. And it's a thing that connects us to the world and to the supernatural realm, the celestial realm, the realm of the creator. It's all intertwined. Am I right?
That's right. That's right.
And I think for many people, meaning those that perhaps are not religious people or people who consider themselves scientists exclusively and may not have much of a spiritual side to them, this is a rather foreign thing, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. I think that it was probably a bit easier for me to grasp the understanding for my fortunate experience working with Table Mountain. And they also brought in as a consultant, the famous Tom King. And I took a number of workshops one workshop with him and working with the tribe and him on a number of matters. He had a book called Saving Places That Count.
Yeah. What did Tom King have to say? What did you learn from Tom's expression or Tom's reflections on all this?
He had a very native first perspective. I learned about cultural viewsheds.
No, but when you're saying cultural viewsheds, I think this relates to the cultural landscape, the traditional cultural properties. I mean, all of that and much more. And so what we're talking about is trying to understand or grasp that the place is not a site per se. The place is the place. It's the geography. It's the water. It's the sky. It's the plants. It's all of this, all intertwined and interconnected, that is a place of our ancestors, our heritage, our traditions. And Native people have an amazing tether, a connection, I don't even know what the right word to use, an anchor to the land.
Right. I have one specific example. There was a development project within what would be called a traditional cultural property in Tom King's definition.
Okay.
The development, there was a trail and several sites, a burial in one portion of the whole landscape, bedrock mortars, anything that you can think of was there.
Okay.
The development project wanted to be placed in an area that didn't have these items, but it was sort of in the middle, but they were absent of any artifacts or sites within this area. That to a Native person in this example would not, putting I'll just say a Walmart in this case, putting the Walmart in the middle of this traditional cultural property does not protect the property. It destroys it in this view, just because it didn't, the footprint didn't hit the trail or bulldoze any burials. There's still a Walmart in this area that we consider sacred. So yes, the impacts may not be direct onto a specific site, artifact, item. There is still a direct impact.
And looking back to our examples working in the Kelso Valley, North Sky Project, they were trying to place wind turbines on different landforms that they had pre-existing identified. And they had tried to clear them conventionally by doing survey and finding sites that they felt to be eligible. And one of the biggest problems that we had was on a exposed bedrock outcrop. Lo and behold, there were glass beads scattered on that outcrop in various spots. So the problem is that if you think about it, independent of a traditional cultural landscape or an archaeological site, there was no site there per se. There was simply some artifacts scattered on stone.
Mm-hmm.
So to an archaeologist, well, you would collect those and that would be the mitigation. But to the Native thought, those were sacred sites. Those were places where people prayed or people found an important location that was spiritual and holy and of value and had an impact. So I think, that met sort of the technical, legalistic element of historic preservation, sort of meeting the cosmological realm of Native Americans. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what you're talking about, I think.
Right. Yes, absolutely. We're going back to consultation and a successful story.
Sure.
There were a number of tribes involved in this project. Some of them did not have a good history or experience working with archaeologists. Trust was something that had to be built. And I unfortunately cannot claim credit for this, but whoever was involved in the mitigation measures for this project did an amazing job, in my opinion, by allowing all of the concerned parties to participate in the surveys.
Yes.
And one of the problems that many of the archaeologists were telling management was that they're identifying things that they aren't anything. Some relationships were, and some of the monitors were very young, had just learned to identify things themselves.
Sure.
From their various classes. But like I mentioned earlier, some archaeologists have treated Native people with in a dismissive way and told them that what they thought was important and valuable was actually not. So this project actually did a great thing, and we recorded everything. And if there was a dispute on whether or not it was an actual artifact or anything, it didn't matter. Thus were taken in the notes, but it was recorded as a important tribal property. I'm not sure what they actually called the term or not, but it was recorded.
So they were treated with respect and dignity and value.
Exactly. And that worked well, and that project turned out well. The people were happy that we were working with, and I'd say that was a success and should be adopted if possible.
Yeah, what an epiphany. Working with people and caring for them, respecting them, and communicating with them and listening. I think that's the takeaway, isn't it, Danielle?
It is.
So I can't believe it. We've done an hour together, Danielle, and we've, being an archaeologist and talking about rock art, we have just scratched the surface.
It's true.
So I so appreciate you spending the time with me and putting this together at the last minute. Danielle, you're a treasure and a lovely person. And thank you for your unique perspective on relationships with Native people, cultural resource management, and heritage values. Did you enjoy yourself?
Thank you. I enjoyed myself very much. It was such an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Well, thank you, Danielle. See you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Rock Art Podcast with Dr. Alan Garfinkel and Chris Webster. You can find this podcast on the educational podcast app Lyceum, Lyceum, and wherever you find podcasts. Find show notes and contact information at www.arcpodnet.com/rockart. Thanks for listening, and thanks for sharing this podcast with your family and friends. This episode was produced by Chris Webster from his RV Traveling America, Tristan Boyle in Scotland, and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and was edited by Chris Webster.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.